Hey everyone, today let's look at programmatically creating UI labels line by line. To start, go ahead and open up Xcode and choose the single view application. You can name this whatever you like. I'm just going to name it my label. The language I'll be using is Swift and devices are universal. Hit next and you can create that wherever you like. So once your project loads, go ahead and delete this main.storyboard file. If you'd like to see why we're doing this more in depth, I'll put a link in the description below to our previous video. Alright, so go into info.plist and go ahead and delete that main there. And then lastly, we can go to the my target and delete the main under deployment info and main interface. Okay, so right now there's no entry point for our app, and we're going to create our own in the app.delegate.swift under the did finish launching with options. Alright, so here I'll say that we are going to ignore the storyboard, just like that. We're going to be using this variable up here, window, to create our own entry point. You can say window is equal to a UI window, open parentheses, and use the frame initializer there. And what we'll pass it is our UI screen dot main dot bounds, just like that. It should autofill for you. And next, it'll be looking for this make key invisible function. And lastly, you can say the Windows root view controller is equal to a UI navigation controller, open parentheses, with a root view controller of our already made view controller here. So we can pass our view controller right there and do a double set of parentheses here just to instantiate it. And at this point, we've now created our own entry point for the app using this view controller, which will be the first one presented onto the scene. If you were to build and run this now, it should work, but it may appear broken because all you'll see is a black screen. All that means is that the default background color of a view controller is black. So all we have to do to make sure that everything is working properly is set the background color when the view loads to a UI color of white. Alright? So if we were to build and run this now, what we should see is a navigation bar on the top and a blank white screen. Alright, looks like we're good to go. So now, up here above your viewDidLoad function, somewhere in the class, we can begin to create our new label programmatically. Let's say, let my label of type UILabel be equal to, and let's do these two opening and closing brackets there, and a double parentheses to instantiate that. So what we're actually doing here, the compiler is going to be a little bit upset for us at the moment. What we have to do inside of this closure that is now depicting what our UI label will be like, we have to create a label, right? And then return that label. Okay. Now you have successfully programmatically created a UI label. It just doesn't look like much. So what we can do, first of all, is set the label's text equal to something like hello world. Alright. Now this label has a text of hello world, but where is it? And how do we get it onto the scene? Well, down here in this viewDidLoad, right after we set the view's background color to white, let's add something like place my label. And right here, we can set what is called the label's frame, my label dot frame equal to a CG rect. Now a CG rect is like a CG point and a CG size, but kind of combined together. So we'll use this initializer that has both these CG points and dimensions to create a CG size. What's important to note is that the origin point for the X and Y are actually the top left corner of your application. So unlike the Cartesian coordinate plane that you use in school that started in the middle, ours starts in the top left, and the greater you go on the X value, the more right it goes, and the greater you go on the Y value, the more downward it goes. So if we were to set this label to have an X coordinate of 100 and a Y coordinate of 100, and let's say it has a width of 200 to allow plenty of text and a height of about 50 there. We have just created a label that is 100 over from our X origin, 100 down from our Y origin, and it has a width of 200 and a height of 50. Alright, so if we were to build and run this now, so as you can see, after we build and run this, nothing actually changes, and I'll tell you why. Although we've set these properties of our label and then set the frame property of our label, we haven't actually added it to the scene. And we can do that very simply by doing view.addSubview myLabel. Looks good. Now that we've added the label as a subview of our view, it should go wherever the view goes. So that we can see the frame that the label is set in, I'm going to give it a background color, like so. Label.background color is equal to a UI color dot, let's say, gray. And here you'll notice that the label is set to the left alignment, and we can quickly change that in the same way by doing label.text alignment is equal to .center, just like that, and that should center the text inside of its frame there. Let's build and run that. Looks good. Before we go any further with any more customizations, I just want to set the label to the exact center of the view, and I'll show you how we can do that with these X and Y values here. We can set the X to view.frame.width divided by 2, and that'll access the width of our view here and divide it by 2, and that should give us the exact X center there. Whoops, using the wrong backslashes here. There we go. And for the Y, we'll do the same thing, where we access the view and its frame and the height of the view, and we're also going to divide that by 2, and that'll give us the exact center of the Y value here. Alright, so I'll build and run that. So obviously, even though we set our X and Y values to be the exact center of this view, our label still doesn't seem to be lined up correctly. The reason being, just like this view that has an origin point of the top left, so do labels and any other element you're adding to the screen. So when we set these X and Y coordinates, we were actually referencing this origin point here. To fix that, we can take the X value, which is half of the view, and we're going to minus it, subtract from it, half of the width of the label, and that should move this point on the label to the center. And if we do the same thing with the Y and we subtract half of the height of the label, which is 25, we should notice that after we build and run it, our label is exactly in the center where we want it, and now we can start customizing more about the label. To start, it's kind of hard to see that text against the gray background, so we can say label.textColor is equal to a UI color dot white, and that'll make it easier to see. And if I build and run that, so now that the label is a little bit easier to read, I'm going to customize it a little bit more with the label.font, and we can set it to a UI font with the open parentheses. And I like to use this initializer, which just lets you name a font, which I have right here. I like using Baskerville semi-bold italic, and the size we could set to 20. Alright, so if we build and run that, you can see that we've successfully changed the font. And there's still plenty we can change about this. We can say that the label.layer dot border color will be equal to a UI color dot green, let's say, and this one's actually going to take the green dot CG color. It's just a different way of providing the information for that color. And we'll do label dot layer dot border width, and we'll set that to 2, and that's actually a pretty wide border for a label. Let's build and run that. Alright, not the best color scheme, but it's working. Let's see if we can change the shape of the label a little bit by saying label.layer.corner radius is equal to 10, let's say. And we can build and run that. And you can see that we changed the shape of that border there to have some of those rounded corners. Finally, one thing that's pretty helpful is that if you have a label that is too long and you don't want to stretch it out on the screen, you can actually add more lines by just saying label.number of lines is equal to, we'll give it 2 lines there, and we'll just change this hello world label to something a little bit longer. Hello world, I am a label and I am proud to be on your iOS app. Alright, so that's a little long, and we can build and run that and see what it does. And you can see here that we've now added the ability for this label to go under 2 lines, and if we were to make it longer, you'd see all of it, and you have the option to add as many lines as you like or that is necessary for your app. If you'd like to, within your own app, if you do label dot, it'll pull up this menu here, and you can see all the things about the label that you're able to customize. I just gave you some of the few ones that I find most helpful, and you can play around with those settings. Maybe you'll do a better job of making it look nice, but that's the fundamentals of adding a label programmatically and setting it to where you want it to be on your view. Anyway, I hope you guys liked this tutorial, and thanks for watching.